The leaks keep coming. The U.S. military Department of Defense having issues keeping the lid on some very sensitive documents that unveil a lot about what's going on with the United States and Ukraine and Russia. So we're going to go through all of that. There is some summations of what these documents contain. We're going to look at the New York Times, and Zero Hedge also had a nice summary and some bullet points of what they contain. But John Kirby came out to the White House today and took a lot of questions from the press, and we know how hysterical they get about classified documents. And they were hysterical about Trump's overdue library books. These are actionable military documents that are talking about one of the most important things in many journalists' lives, which is this Ukraine war for some reason. So they were there in the White House asking a ton of questions about this. Are these authentic? Are you concerned about how long these have been out here? And John Kirby's very upset about it. He says they shouldn't be published. They shouldn't be spread around. And there will be consequences, including a criminal investigation. So we're going to go through all of the different clips and then see where this will lead now that many allies know that this sensitive data is out there. Does it implicate those relationships? Does it aid the Russians? Does it help the Ukrainian side make a decision about where this goes? Who knows? But the New York Times does give us some background. And so before we dive into the reaction, let's see what they tell us about these materials. The Times, they write, the leaked documents reveal the depth of the U.S. spy efforts and Russia's military struggles. From Washington, they write that a trove of leaked Pentagon documents reveals how deeply Russia's security and intelligence services have been penetrated by the United States. Documents portrayed a battered Russian military that's struggling. And they also tell us that these documents contain daily real-time warnings to American intelligence agencies on the timing of Moscow strikes. So the U.S. has basically infiltrated major portions of their intelligence network. The source of this leak remains unknown, and it also reveals the American assessment of a Ukrainian military that is itself in dire straits. That's not something you hear a lot about. Normally, it's about how great they're doing and how terrible the Russians are doing. But the Ukrainian military is in dire straits, and we often ask ourselves, why are these leaks happening? Are they trying to instigate and cause a reaction? You know, there's always an action and a reaction, and they often are thinking these through. They are the so-called intelligence agencies. The leaked material from late February, early March, but it's found on social media in recent days, outlines critical shortages of air defense munitions and discusses the gains being made by Russian troops. The intelligence also seems to indicate the United States is spying on Ukraine's top military and their political leaders. Uh-oh. Does that include Zelensky? A reflection of Washington's struggle to get a clear view of their strategies. Now, the material reinforces ideas that the U.S. has a clearer understanding of these operations, but the leak has potential to do real damage to Ukraine's war effort by exposing which Russian agencies to the United States knows the most about, giving Moscow an opportunity to cut off the sources. If Moscow is leaking like a sieve, now they know, and now they can fix all the problems. Current and former officials say it's too soon to know the extent of the damage. The leak has already complicated relations with allied countries. That's a bummer. I thought that Joe Biden was a master of diplomacy who was going to be an adult, who's going to not allow these things to happen. After reviewing the documents, a senior Western intelligence official said the release was painful and suggested that it could curb intelligence sharing. Documents could also hurt diplomatic ties in other ways. The United States is not just spying on Russia, but also on its allies. That's going to hardly surprise different countries, but it might have problems with countries like South Korea, who is needed to help the Ukrainian supply chain. So they want briefs. Congress is saying, give us an update. Where is all of this coming from? The trove is about 100 pages long. New York Times has reviewed more than 50 of those pages. They were appearing online in photographs, and they launched an inquiry on Friday. The FBI jumped into this thing, and senior officials are freaking out. Now, we're going to go through this and listen to John Kirby here in a quick minute. He is saying that these documents are looking like they're authentic. He's not confirming they're authentic, but the story, as we'll hear, is that he can't say that they are inauthentic. And they're panicking about the documents, which sort of leads one to deduce that maybe it is authentic.
Thanks, John. I understand that you're saying some of these documents might have been altered, but is it your assessment that at least some of them are authentic?
We know that some of them have been doctored. I won't speak to the validity of all the documents, the ones that that don't immediately appear to be doctored. We're still working through the validity of all the documents that we know are out there. The Department of Defense has stood up an interagency effort to try to look at the national security implications, which includes taking a look at these documents to determine whether they're actually valid or not. And I'm just not in a position to speak to that work, which is ongoing.
All right, so they are continuing to investigate it, but it certainly sounds like it's a little bit authentic. Now, when they asked John Kirby about this, the documents have already been floating around out there for a long period of time. They're trying to scrub them and trying to identify the sources on this thing. But they've been floating around for a bit, and you've got to imagine the Russians, they have access to 4chan and they have access to Twitter and so on. And so Kirby is saying they shouldn't have access to this at all. These should not be republished.
On the documents, is the White House concerned about the period of time that elapsed from when they were posted to when they sort of gained traction?
We're worried that these documents are out there, ma'am. They shouldn't be out there, period.
No,
that's the big worry. And in trying to figure out how that happened. And I'm sure as a part of that, the timeline will be looked at as well. But the main concern is that they're out there, period. They don't need to be, shouldn't be. Absolutely shouldn't be in the public domain.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. They reveal a bunch of sensitive information. So there is a brief that is taking place. The president was familiarized with all of this. Let's take a quick look, though, at a little bit more detail about what these documents contained. This was a nice summation of the documents from Zero Hedge, written by Tyler Durden, posted April 10th. U.S. is spying on Zelensky. Here's what we know. Now, the media will give you a nice summation of it, but this is, I think, a summation of the media. And so this says that the highly classified documents, which began being confirmed as authentic by the New York Times, which we just read, and others in recent days, has sent the defense officials scrambling. CNN also confirmed on Monday, based on one of the documents which appeared online, that the U.S. has been spying on Zelensky, a disclosure which has caused officials in Kyiv to be deeply frustrated. So here's sort of a censored, redacted version of what one of the documents looks like. It's sort of blurred out, but you can see it's a document that has a bunch of different blocks and maps and different locations. And it looks pretty official, right? It looks like it's something that would be, this is part of a series of another 100 videos or 100 pictures. But somebody's taking photographs of these things and then sharing them. Now, obviously, again, that is the redacted version of that. It's blurred out. You can't read it. But here, one document reveals that the U.S. has been spying on Zelensky, saying that's unsurprising. The U.S. intelligence document suggests that American officials have been worried about Zelensky decision-making and other decisions to strike into NATO territory. Now, there's a nice summation of some bullet points on this. They say, here are 14 major revelations contained within that 100 image cache of other documents. Pretty serious stuff here. 1, locations of CIA recruitment efforts focused on human agents which have access to closed-door conversations of world leaders. Closed-door conversations of world leaders. CIA efforts to get human agents inside rooms with other world leaders. That's a pretty big one. Russia's Wagner group tried to obtain weapons from a NATO member called Turkey. Also, some of the internal future plans of the Wagner are apparently known to U.S. intelligence. There's also details of sensitive satellite technology used to track Russian forces, namely a Lapis time series video. This is an advanced satellite system, which is, until now, has been a closely guarded secret, right? So this is serious stuff. Now, obviously, the details are not here, but these documents contain the details. Ukrainian battlefield assessments prepared by the Pentagon. The Guardian is reporting they reviewed one slide. They said one slide suggested that a small contingent of less than 100 special operations personnel from NATO, France, America, Britain, Latvia were already active in Ukraine, right? So NATO special forces active in Ukraine. Descriptions of intelligence collection activities by the CIA, the NSA, the DIA, law enforcement agencies, and the NRO. battlefield situation reviews, talking about the Donbass grinding campaign of attrition, saying that Russia is likely heading towards a stalemate, thwarting Moscow's goal to capture the entire region. So a stalemate, not a loss, is what they're talking about. Wonder how that's sitting with Ukraine. The Washington Post reported that the U.S. intelligence community has penetrated the Russian military and its commanders so deeply that it can warn Ukraine in advance of strikes. Another page reveals that the U.S. intelligence community knew that the Russian Ministry of Defense had transmitted plans to blow up a number of bridges. They talk about Ukrainian air defenses. They talk about Israel's Mossad-supported protests about Netanyahu. It's everything, man. It's a ton of stuff. One report says internal discussions show that the South Korean officials are wary of requests to hand over artillery shells to the United States because they're concerned they're going to end up in Ukraine. So the South Koreans don't want to be involved in this mess either. Another report talks about Ukrainian air defense being in peril if it's not reinforced by Western allies. And so we have a lot of questions about these documents and about, the legitimacy of them and who they are coming from and the accuracy of what's contained in them. But the Pentagon, John Kirby, and others are being asked about this, and they're responding, telling us that there is a full investigation wide open. The FBI, DOJ, all of the DOD coming in hot to make sure they stop these leaks and get to the bottom of it.
Thanks. John, if you can start on the classified document leaks. Has the president been briefed on this breach, and does the U.S. government at this point have any sense of who was behind it?
The president has been briefed. He was first briefed late last week when we all got word that there were some documents out there, and he has stayed briefed and in contact with national security officials throughout the weekend. So he has been briefed. And as for the source, as you know, the Department of Defense has referred this to the Department of Justice for a criminal investigation, and I certainly would refer you to them, but I'm not aware that they've come to any conclusions at this point about where they're coming from.
And just to follow up on that, at this point, do you believe the leak is contained? Are there more documents out there that have not been released publicly? Is this an ongoing threat?
We don't know. We truly don't.
Crazy. So they don't even know, they don't even know who this person is. And there are questions about the timing and about whether they are, one of the ways they will track who's leaking stuff is they'll offer different versions to different people and they'll see what version is being leaked. And then they'll be able to trace that back to the source. So they don't know, or they're not telling us. But there will be consequences, as you can imagine. Kirby is asked about potential penalties. Are they going to be prosecuting these people? Is there an investigation ongoing? What are the consequences going to be?
Can you lay out what the consequences will be for the people or the person responsible for the leaks of these classified information? And secondly, have you been able to gauge what their motive is just based on how they've released this information?
The answer to both questions is no, I can't. There's a Justice Department investigation going on right now, a criminal investigation. I'm certainly not going to say anything that would prejudice that. And that work is just starting. So we don't know who's behind this. We don't know what the motive is. And I can't remember who asked before, but we don't know what else might be out there. So we've got to let the Department of Defense run their process with the interagency and taking a look at the national security implications of it. And we got to let the Justice Department be able to pursue their investigation, again, completely unfettered, and let the facts and the evidence take them where they may, and we'll deal with it on the back end.
What's your message to them or anybody else who's considering leaking information?
This is, again, without confirming the validity of the documents, this is information that has no business in the public domain. It has no business, if you don't mind me saying, on the pages of front pages of newspapers or on television.
Whoa.
It is not intended for public consumption, and it should not be out there. What we're going to try to do is do the best we can to figure out how this happened. And again, the Justice Department will take it from a criminal investigative procedure, and if the Defense Department has to change processes, they'll do that. But I think every American can understand, at least I would hope every American can understand, that in order to protect this country every day the way we do, one of the things we have to protect is information. Not only the information itself, but the manner in which we glean that information. And so I think you can understand why everybody is taking this particular set of disclosures very, very seriously.
It's pretty amazing that they still don't know where they're coming from. You got to imagine it's a pretty small amount of people who have access to this type of stuff, and to adjust the spigots of informational flow. Maybe they've already done it. Now, another reporter asked about whether security protocols were being updated and how this would change what they're currently doing. Obviously, they're in the middle of a protracted conflict in Ukraine. Is this going to change anything? Is this going to change the strategy? Is this an interface between the United States and Ukraine, or the Russians hacking it, or what's going on here?
Thank you, Kareem, and thank you, Kirby. In light of the classified documents, I wonder if you could tell us when was the last time the protocol to grant security clearances was updated or revised in the government? And in light of the leaks, does the president believe you should take another look at that?
I think the Department of Defense has already started to take a look at distribution, for instance, at the Pentagon. I'll let them speak to that. I don't know the answer to your question on protocols for who is or who is not granted security clearances. There is already in place and remains in place a very diligent, deliberate effort to manage security clearances, and sometimes we get knocked because it takes a little too long for people's clearances to get approved because the process is so careful and deliberate. I think, to your question, I think we just need to be careful right now speculating or guessing what might be behind or who might be behind what looks like a potential leak here of classified information. So we need to let the process sort of bear itself out.
So are you saying there's a question over whether this was a leak by someone who had access to the materials?
I'm saying we don't know, which is why I'm going to, I think you're getting to remedies, and I understand that. We're only a couple of days into this. We need to let the Department of Justice do their job, investigate this, see what they learn. Now, again, that said, the Department of Defense has already said that they're taking a look at distribution and looking if there's changes they need to make administratively there at the Pentagon, since it appears that they have the locus of most of the documents. But again, before we start making major muscle movements, we really need to know what we got here and have a better sense from the Justice Department.
Thank you.
And there was a big question about where these documents came from and how they got on the internet in the first place. CNN had some interesting background on this. They say the documents appeared online last month on the social media platform called Discord, which many of you may be familiar with. We got banned from Discord after January 6th. Punks. According to screenshots of the post reviewed by CNN. Now, the posts are photos of crumpled documents laid on top of magazines and surrounded by other random objects like a zip closed bags and Gorilla Glue. It's as if they had been hastily folded up and shoved into a pocket before being removed from a secure location. A source familiar with these kind of documents told CNN. A Discord spokesman confirmed in a statement on Sunday that they are cooperating with law enforcement on the investigation. Those documents discovered on Friday all bore classified markings, some top secret, the highest level of classification. It's unclear who is behind the leaks or where exactly they originated. CNN took a look at 53 of them, all appearing to have been produced mid-February, early March. Wide range of documents. Some are authentic, often reveal the degree to which all the different intelligence agencies have been infiltrated. But there's not much on the source, right? It just shows up on Discord randomly, and then it spreads all around the internet like wildfire, and it looks like somebody crumpled up the documents. So there will be more. Now, John Kirby, of course, continues to answer questions about this. Will people lose access to these materials? Are security clearances going to be revoked? And he asks a big, important question. Is the United States losing this battle? We've been hearing for years about Russian hackers and all of these things. Is this it? Is it coming to fruition? Are we under attack? Where are these documents coming from? Or is it just because our government is incompetent and we have some leaker somewhere? Or have they been compromised? Is this a bigger problem? Or is this just an accident? Somebody accidentally plugged in a hard drive somewhere. John Kirby is asked the question, is America losing this fight?
Do you have a sense of the number of people who would have had access to these documents apparently prepared for the joint staff?
I do
Is
not.
it hundreds, thousands?
I do not. I'd refer you to the Defense Department.
And then, given this leak and previous leaks, should the American people think that the administration is losing the battle against whoever wants to steal our secrets, whether it's foreign adversaries or hackers or whomever?
I think the American people need to know and deserve to know that we're taking this very, very seriously. The president has been briefed on this. He will stay briefed on this. The Department of Defense is looking into this. They are leading an interagency effort here to review whatever national security implications might come out of all this. And the Department of Justice is leading a criminal investigation. So we're taking this very, very seriously. There is no excuse for these kinds of documents to be in the public domain. They don't deserve to be in the public domain. They deserve to be protected. So we're going to get to the bottom of this, and then if there's actions that need to be taken as we learn more about the extent of what happened here, we'll obviously take those.
It's going to be curious to see if this somehow gets connected to any of the other classified documents cases we've talked about. Not that they're related, but if this punishment, for example, if they say this person, if they are eventually caught, if they should be punished with 20 years in jail or prison for leaking classified documents and having documents potentially exposed in the public domain, could that be a precedent for Donald Trump to get 20 years, or something like that is where I'm going with that. But Joe Biden not, because he's been cooperative with the DOJ, and of course they are his DOJ. So why not have those double standards? Just an idea. But this, of course, feels like it's a whole different category of items. Donald Trump, many of those documents, we heard they were rumored to be leaks about nuclear codes and stuff. Highly doubt that. It turns out most of it sounded like memorabilia and letters from other world leaders and things like that would still be sensitive because maybe it's a handwriting from Kim Jong-un or something. So you have this issue, but that feels a little bit different. That is in the hands of a former president, somebody that had security clearance and had protection over this. This is a whole different type of ball game. But I'm still wondering if, we have several different classified documents now, and I'm wondering how they're going to deal with each one of them. These are classified documents being, it sounds like, maliciously leaked, unless they were accidentally leaked. But we've had 2 caches of them now. So it will continue on. We'll see if Joe Biden gets a different standard than Trump, or how this person gets prosecuted. The DOJ is apparently looking into all 3 of them. We'll see what happens there. Now, as we saw, there were more hints that this document implicated other world leaders, specifically Zelensky. And there was a very cozy relationship between the United States and this guy for some reason. And they asked him about this. Is Joe Biden going to speak with Zelensky? Is the White House going to be reaching out to him? Or are you kind of caught in a bad predicament? Do you have some making up to do? Does he need a couple $100 billion more to help you kind of get over this little mistake?
Plans for President Biden to speak with President Zelensky over the leak, or is the White House offering any kind of reassurance to Ukrainian officials about the safety of some of their most sensitive information?
U.S. officials have been in touch with relevant allies and partners over the last couple of days at very high levels. And I'll leave it at that.
And can you speak to not just the potential leak here, but what appears to be some doctoring of the information? Is this something where it's possible that there may have been a leak, but then a different actor came in, manipulated the information, and posted it online? What's the working theory in terms of the actual altering of this information?
I don't know that we've arrived at a working theory. It does appear that at least in some cases, the information posted online had been altered from what we think would be the original source. But there's just no way I can tell you with any granularity right now how that came to be. We're diving into this as strenuously as we can to try to understand that. And in keeping with your point, I mean, we urge all of you to be very careful about about how you report on this story,
See?
since we know, at least in some cases, that information was doctored.
Yeah, be extra careful about that. Be extra careful about it. Don't share it. We don't want, there's an open criminal investigation going on, which, be careful about that. But also, a lot of it could be misinformation. And so the stuff that really, if you can litter it with misinformation, then you can sort of spoil the whole batch, right? One bad apple spoils the whole bunch. And you've got this situation where you just, well, that's bad. The Russian casualties aren't what they say they are. They're actually 10 times that. And the Ukrainian casualties aren't that number. Divide that by 10, and then you'll get the real numbers. But the Russians, fixed it. So you don't know. And that seems like it's about par for the course for the rest of this entire conflict. Bunch of fog of war, a lot of difficulty understanding exactly what's going on. But the United States government having a difficult time keeping their documents secure. So another question came out about whether this compromises the Ukraine efforts and really whether the United States is going to upgrade their systems. This guy had an interesting day today. He was very upset about a lot of different questions. And here he is asking John Kirby about the leaks.
Second question on the classified documents. Has any of that leak led to a direct compromise of efforts to support Ukraine from this administration? And secondly, those who are in that business say that the biggest problem we have is that we need software and hardware upgrades to guarantee that we don't get hacked. Is there any indication that the government is going to invest in the infrastructure to make sure that you can block that in the future?
So on your first question, no, we continue to support Ukraine. That's not going to change. President's been. I'm not going to talk about the specific documents that are out there or speak to intelligence. I think you can understand why I wouldn't do that. Your question was, has there been any effect on support to Ukraine? The answer is no. We're going to continue to support Ukraine, as the president has said, for as long as it takes. On technological upgrades, again, I don't have anything to speak to today, and I don't know that even if we did, that we would talk about that in a public setting. But again, we're only a few days into this. We've got an investigation going on at Justice. We got DOD looking at their processes over there. I think we need to let those two agencies do their job, do that work.
All right, we've got one final question before we jump over to the consequences of this and what might happen with China, Taiwan, and other actors on the world stage. Good question. Is this leak just the beginning? Will there be another bomb to drop? Is more data going to come out that is even more consequential and problematic?
You tell us that you simply don't know what's coming next. Is the U.S. government effectively in the position of crouching and waiting for the next bombshell to hit on Telegram or Twitter? You're in a position where you simply don't know how long this is going to go on or how many documents are going to be published?
We don't know what's out there, James. We don't know who's responsible for this, and we don't know if they have more that they intend to post. So we're watching this and monitoring it as best we can. But the truth and the honest answer to your question is we don't know. And is that a matter of concern to us? You're darn right it is.
Yeah, so the answer is yes. Yeah, it's a long way of saying yes. Is the U.S. waiting and crouching, anticipating another bomb to drop? Yes, that's the answer. Yes. Unfortunately, yes, we are. So, okay, well, that's great. So that's the military in action over there out of the White House, hanging out, waiting for something else to happen. We'll see if there are consequences to any of this. Of course, there will be.